During MSI 2026, right before the grand final match between HLE and VLG, Riot thought it would be cool to host a show match where they featured a pro play game on the new classic game mode, inviting many retired stars to the game to relive the old school experience. While it was cool to see the old Rift from back in 2014, I couldn't help but feel like something was off when I watched it. I made a quote tweet about it on Twitter where I remarked on how there was this uncanny valley feel to it where on one hand there were aspects of the game that were visually old school, no mistake about it, but on the other hand it didn't feel like old school League of Legends, sort of like a parody version of what things were like back in the day if you will. By the time you find this video, League Classic will have been out for a week or so, and given the initial excitement everyone has had towards it, no doubt driven by nostalgia, a great deal of speculation has been going about concerning whether or not by adding old school League to the game, if that will draw an influx of popularity back, particularly from older players who have since quit the game. While it's all exciting and such, not to be a doom poster, I actually don't think LoL Classic will do much for the game's popularity. If anything, I have a strong feeling it won't even last more than a month, and I wanted to talk about it. So to better explain where I'm coming from, I want to first identify the running issue with League of Legends at the moment. As you know, over the past couple of years, the game has entered a period of stagnation in regards to player base. While League is still globally popular with over millions of daily players the world over, particularly in the West like NA and EU, interest in the game is nowhere near as overwhelming as it was during the 2010s. A big part of that is, of course, the natural life cycle of a title that's been out for almost 2 decades at this point. Any place where video games are a thing, people are bound to at least be somewhat acquainted with the game League of Legends. That and, a title can't grow forever, that's just not tenable or realistic. All the same, overall sentiments towards the game have been declining, however steadily. What contributes a lot to that, at least in my opinion, is the overall loss of novelty and excitement the game was known for back in the day. From League's inception to around, I would say, the pandemic, the first decade was marked by a ton of innovation and constant improvements and updates being made to the game. I distinctly remember every year being flushed with new champions, reworks, changes to the game systems and whatnot that distinguished every season from each other. In comparison, the second decade so far could be summed up with a single word: stable. Stability is not a bad thing, mind you. The game is still objectively enjoyable and engaging, and while the new seasons don't offer quite the same number of sweeping changes that we used to have, there's obviously plenty of interest in League yet. Even so, evidenced by the League Next initiative that Riot's been investing a ton of personnel and working capital into, even they themselves acknowledge something has to change in a meaningful way to essentially revitalize the game, not only to entice an influx of new players, but potentially garner interest back from old ones. Alongside what they plan to do with the modern game, they decided to take a page out of World of Warcraft's book by introducing an old-school version of the game, Classic League of Legends. Despite being 2 entirely different video game genres, the premise remains identical. The goal of Classic is to recreate the experience of the game based on an older version, complete with champions, items, systems, graphics, and so on from that time period. Nostalgia is an extremely, and I can't emphasize enough, extremely powerful tool, especially when it comes to video games, and this isn't the first time a game company has tried to take advantage of that. Every single big box producer of a live service has at one point or another entertained the thought or acted on trying to capture the old school experience. The most apt example being World of Warcraft and their WoW Classic server, which, while not nearly as big as the actual retail server, aka live servers, continues to serve as a poster child example of how yes, if the experience is good enough, players are willing to play through what is effectively a quote-unquote worse version of the game. Granted, Classic and retail are fundamentally different experiences, which is why they've both found meaningful success. Therein lies the primary reason behind my stance on Classic League not measuring up if we go by inherent value and appeal. See, unlike MMOs, League of Legends by and large is exactly the same as it used to be. The gameplay experience may have become more elaborate and comprehensive, what with all the new champions in the game and new objectives, but at its core, the game is intended to be recognizable regardless of when you played it. If you were to take a player from 2013 League of Legends, let's just assume they're pretty skilled, and ask them to play the game right now, with a bit of an adjustment period, they would easily be able to get back into the rhythm and recover to their previous prime relatively quickly. Reason being, the essential experience is the one part of League that has never actually changed. The boundaries and constraints of the game are almost identical to what they were before. For one, the map structure and layout. While there have been a few changes throughout the years to move around the walls of the jungle to be more symmetrical or to add outposts to top and bot lane, Summoner's Rift would still be fully recognizable to an older player. It isn't like they added a 4th lane or changed the map layout from a square to a circle. The only thing that really changed across the years are the pieces with which we play the game, that being champions, items, objectives, and whatnot. The chessboard, if you will, has not been touched at all. Where I'm getting at is that from a conceptual standpoint, Classic League compared to Modern League are too similar to each other for Riot to create a mutually exclusive and divergent experience. When all is said and done, Classic League very much is just a shittier version of Modern League. The reason it works in MMOs is because over time the gameplay experience evolves, expands, and even changes on a foundational level. Full disclosure, I never actually played WoW, I was more of a MapleStory guy, so I'll use that for comparison. Coincidentally, MapleStory is also releasing a classic server, and I actually feel like it's going to do quite well. To start, we already have a ton of what we call pre-Big Bang private servers, with upwards of thousands of players actively participating in them. What makes old-school MMO servers more viable is that over time, new content continually gets introduced to the game. New areas, new monsters, new maps, new classes, and new systems. Eventually, it gets to a point where the game advances in content so much that the essential experience begins to shift in priorities. When asking anyone about the old days of MapleStory and what they remember most, the things they will likely talk about are the social aspects of the game, stuff like chatting and forming parties with random players to do party quests. Another one would be the feeling of exploration and adventure, navigating through long stretches and dungeons without an easy way back to safety, having to create massive raid parties to take down a boss for like an hour. Compare that to the modern experience of playing Maple, where every class does billions of damage and can blow up the entire map over and over again. Character progression is turned into exclusively a solo grind, with party play options being next to non-existent. Gear and stats are inflated like crazy, and there are millions of different systems you have to keep in mind. The point is, there is so much more to modern MapleStory than old school that you'd be hard-pressed to even call them the same game. Over time, the essential experience has evolved. If you take a person who grew up playing Maple back in 2008 and put them into 2026 Maple, the game would be unrecognizable, and I'd be willing to bet folding money they wouldn't enjoy the new experience because it just isn't the same game anymore. By contrast, League of Legends, despite evolving a lot in its own way, retains much of the same framework as it used to from the very beginning. That's what makes it so appealing. It's a highly replayable gameplay loop with enough interaction variety to ensure no two games are ever the same, no matter how many thousands of games you play. As such, the only thing needed to maintain such an eclectic series of events is by changing the pieces. Throughout each and every season, champions are buffed and nerfed, new champions come out, existing ones get reworked, items are rotated in and out of use, and every so often objectives are added and removed. The core elements of League, however, are still there. For example, a champion kit still retains a passive, 3 basic abilities and an ultimate, barring very few exceptions. That premise has not changed. Now compared to MapleStory, where over the years classes went from having 3rd job, 4th job, 5th job, even 6th job, adding more skills to every class and more things they could do to fundamentally change the game. An equivalent in League would be if during a massive expansion, every champion was retrofitted to have 4 basic abilities and 3 summoner spells. Or imagine if League was altered to have an entirely new map. Imagine if Summoner's Rift became a 66 mode. Those would be a significant departure from what it used to be. In short, Classic League and Modern League are too similar to each other for players to reconcile a mutually exclusive gameplay experience between them, and so most players, even those who feel immense nostalgia, will subconsciously compare the two, likely at the expense of Classic. 2013 League of Legends is by many accounts objectively worse than Modern League by every possible metric. Yes, modern day League suffers from champion oversaturation, bloated visuals due to copious amounts of skins, and no shortage of 200 years moments where champions are running around one-shotting each other or doing whatever stupid bullshit you can imagine. Yet at the same time, the game is significantly more polished from a visual and mechanical point of view. The vast majority of champions have highly functional kits and distinct purposes with meaningful player skill and tactical expression. Biggest of all, there's just more content and quality of life in the game right now. At most, you'd go back to relive the nostalgia of champions before they got reworked or try out some weird builds. But when you stop and think about it, can you see yourself playing an archaic version of League for a long time? I doubt it. Building off that, in order for an old school or classic server to survive for any more than a month or two at best, it needs a steady player base, and a steady player base can only be obtained by either a continuous influx of new players or an upfront, extremely loyal fan base, neither of which are achievable avenues for Classic League. Being an older version of the game with the same general experience as the current version, no prospective player would actively play on the old server. They might dabble in it for a short while, but ultimately there's just no reason to play on a dead-end version. I'm not sure to what extent Riot plans to take the server, but if the goal is to maintain the classic experience, there's not a whole lot they can do without, defeating the purpose of being classic. Like, they can't take a modern-day champion such as Gwen, Viego, Seraphine, Sylas and retroactively throw them into classic. It just wouldn't be classic anymore. In other words, there will never be a measurable influx of new players, and for this sort of game you need a very large player base to sustainably run the server. Old school MMO private servers can comfortably survive on a tight-knit community of a couple hundred. But considering in a game like League you need 10 people for a match, not to mention all the other ancillary factors behind matchmaking, even conservatively you need an active player base of thousands. What's more, when I mention community, that's another facet obligatory for the survival of an older version. League of Legends doesn't have a community because it isn't a gameplay experience conducive towards building one. A community may exist outside of the game, but not within it. What I mean by that is, sure, everyone has a friend list or you can queue up together and do stuff, but ultimately League is a game without continuity. Every match is an isolated instance that resets from one to another. Compare that to MMORPGs. Players gather together, form guilds, take on quests, dungeons, bosses together, experience the progression of their characters together over weeks, months, and years. On many occasions, they just sit around chewing the fat in a town or whatever without any clear purpose. Growing up in the early 2000s, MMOs were the social media before social media. They were Discord servers before Discord was even a thing. League doesn't create an environment where such interactions can take shape. The players might, such as meeting up in person to go to an internet cafe, play some games, then go out for dinner or drinks or whatever, but the game intrinsically has no such thing. A benchmark motivation the grand majority of classic players have is community. Going back to MapleStory, the biggest contrast in gameplay experience between modern and classic Maple is, again, the community. Modern MapleStory is almost entirely a solo progression game as opposed to classic Maple being all about partying up and grinding together. When it comes to classic servers, I can't speak much for WoW, RuneScape and the like, but for Maple at least, pre-Big Bang MapleStory sucks. Some of the most boring and soul-crushing gameplay of all time. What made it fun was the people, conversing and shooting the shit without really caring about how fast or optimally we were playing. Where League falls into all of this is that, again, you're playing an objectively inferior gameplay experience with no intrinsic or extrinsic incentive to keep playing that over the current version. That brings us to another issue. While they did announce they plan to add a long-term progression system, once more, only an infinitesimal percentage of the live server population will quote-unquote main Classic League. Even with that progression system, I really don't see that many people committing to it the same way people climb the ranked ladder normally. Without a fervently dedicated user base and practically zero possibility of bringing in new Classic-only players, beyond the initial hype and excitement phase where veterans of the game get to relive the old days and later players get a glimpse of what things were like before they joined, Classic League is gonna hemorrhage players within a matter of weeks. Once the rose-tinted nostalgia glasses wear off, you'll find a lot of extremely one-dimensional champion kits and redundant class designs. Players will lack a drive to grind the game when there won't be a traditional ranked ladder. Bottom line is, Classic League doesn't have any staying power. Although, to be fair, I don't think Riot expects or rather wants people to take WoW Classic that seriously. The live servers are where they make most of their revenue after all, and I don't think people would have much of an incentive to spend money on Classic for any reason whatsoever. Why purchase a skin there when you can get the skin in the actual main game? I'd be surprised if they had any expectations of Old School League being anything more than a trip down memory lane and maybe a novel game mode along the lines of Nexus Splits, Earth, Darkstar Singularity, Invasion, Swarm, what have you. But yeah, those are my thoughts on WoW Classic. I had a lot of people requesting I talk about it and what I think it will do for the game. Unfortunately, I'm sorry if it wasn't what you wanted to hear, not to be cynical or anything, but I don't think this will do anything for the game long term. It's a nice gesture for those who want to relive the old days or get a glimpse of it, but even for someone who loves nostalgia, I just don't have that same feeling towards League of Legends that I do towards, I don't know, replaying Pokemon Platinum again or something. What do you guys think though? Do you believe Classic has the makings of something meaningful in the League community, or do you agree with my stance on the matter? You're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments down below. That'll be it for today though, so if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars and join my Discord server, and check out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.